What if I told you that the most complete and advanced theory of reality was written by a guy you've probably never heard of? Christopher Langan came up with the CTMU, the Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, a theory of reality that describes the universe as a self-simulation occurring in the universal mind when he was a teenager living in a cupboard wagon in Montana. What Chris Langan realized is that language and reality have to go together, is that there are some theories of reality that think of the universe purely physically, and there are others that think of it in logical terms, but the CTMU fuses those two perspectives together into a very advanced way of thinking about the universe. Now, Chris Langan kept thinking about this while he worked a series of odd jobs trying to stay alive, from weeding potatoes to working as a firefighter and park ranger and digging clams off the Great South Bay of Long Island. When the CTMU was finally published, he was working as a bar bouncer in New York, and in a real-life Good Will Hunting moment around the turn of the century, he was finally recognized for his incredible intelligence and popularized as the smartest man in the world for scoring off the charts on IQ tests. But Chris Langan's greatest legacy is not any score on a standardized test, but that he created the most advanced theory of reality through a lifetime of dedication to thinking about the universe through absolute truth and logic.
How do you like them apples?
It's a true American story. Someone who went from having nothing in the world to being able to crush any Harvard or Stanford professor in any debate on reality theory. The thing is, some of the concepts in this video may not even sound original to you, and that's because academia has been stealing Langan's ideas for the last quarter century. In 2020, the director of quantum gravity research, Clee Irwin, published a paper called The Self-Simulation Interpretation of Quantum Mechanics, which sounds profound, original, and promising. The only problem is that that language has been used by Langan since the 1980s. In his 2002 paper, The Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, a New Kind of Reality Theory, the term self-simulation appears 5 times, and in 2019, a year before Clee Irwin published his paper, Langan wrote in Introduction to Quantum Metamechanics that due to the universe's structure, reality can be described as a self-simulation. And in 2020, Langan published a paper by the same name, The Reality Self-Simulation Principle. Nevertheless, Irwin didn't cite Langan until he was forced to do so, and published his findings in a popular magazine as an original theory, branding himself as Mr. Self-Simulation. Now, the question here isn't why Clee Irwin takes inspiration from the ideas of Langan. He takes inspiration from many people, from Einstein and Hawking and all of these people who it's totally okay to cite in an academic paper. But this is one of countless examples where properly certified academics have regurgitated Langan's original concepts even though his theory and his work remain uncredited. And so the question is, why are academics scared of a theory of reality created by a horse rancher in Missouri? The CTMU has been intentionally ignored by academia because it is a profound departure from other theories of reality, and it was come up by someone outside of their club. The academic world is far too wrapped up in itself to make time for anyone or anybody else. There's an orthodoxy, there's this publish or perish paradigm where if you are not constantly churning out these marginal improvements and just nitpicking around the edges of whatever field you're in, and you are trying to do comprehensive, really deep thinking work, you are not going to get funded for that because there's no academic imperative for this deep metaphysical research in the foundations of science. So the CTMU, I think, could reshape science in 3 important ways. By changing our ideas of human agency and what it means to be a human within reality, quantum communication, and ultimate reality's structure. It's been noticed for a long time that sense data differs from ultimate realities, that the things that we can see with our eyes or hear with our ears might not be the most fundamental and base reality. And that really freaks out a lot of people, is that our perception shapes our experience of reality, and not just our sight and hearing, but also our emotions, senses. All of the structure of our mind is what shapes our experience. We can't interact with the physical universe without the filter of mind. Everything that we perceive is a construction of the mind. It's like having these rose-tinted glasses of the human structure of cognition and perception. Perception provides limited and subjective information rather than an accurate picture of reality. And it's not clear to us what an accurate picture of reality would even mean. Immanuel Kant, one of the great philosophers, struggled with this question in his work of what does reality mean if you strip its perceptual content from it. And if it is purely subjective and reality consists of multiple perspectives, what is it that brings those perspectives together? How can we live in a shared universe where people are perceiving different things? Stirring the pot, the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics went to scientists who proved that the universe isn't locally real, which means that at the quantum level, you cannot separate observation from reality. When we measure a quantum event, we're not just passively observing the dynamics of that system, but we are participating in it. And this means that quantum systems exist in a state of potentiality prior to our structuring them through our cognitive perceptual syntax. This led physics legend John Wheeler, who coined the term black hole, to come up with this term for the participatory universe, is that we as human beings are not passive perceptors of reality, but active participants in its structure and dynamics. So let me explain. If you imagine a photon coming from a star from billions of light years away, that only hits your eye after billions of years from when the photon was emitted from the star. But nevertheless, according to the findings of quantum mechanics, we are participating in that event. In the same way, those events from the very early state of the universe are retroactively observed by advanced quantum observers way down the line. And so they are only collapsed from that space of potentiality once future observers can actually perceive and interact with them. And that means that the universe is a self-perceptual system, and it needed someone to see those early events in order for them to come into existence, or at least the potential of that having been there. The CTMU backs up what Wheeler called his participatory anthropic principle, which says that human-like observers are necessary in the construction of the universe because we collapse this space of potentiality into reality using our perception. This, according to Wheeler and Langen, explains why the universe appears finely tuned for the emergence of human life. It's actually finely tuned for the emergence of perceptual life, is that the entire process and striving of biological evolution is such that we have human agents who are able to participate in the universe. Perhaps the greatest advance that we'll see coming out of the CTMU is that no longer will human beings be treated as brute physical phenomena, but will be given the respect that we deserve in scientific discourse as agents integral to the structure and dynamics of ultimate reality. The CTMU proves that the entire universe is intelligently self-organized. Returning to the findings of Bell's theorem, we know that the universe is not locally real because particles communicate instantly with one another. You can have two quantum objects that are entangled with one another even if they're light years away, and their states are dependent on one another. This challenges classical physical assumptions both around local causation and the speed of light. Quantum mechanics seems to shatter the determinism of relativity and classical physics. But the CTMU doesn't go as far as some of the quantum theorists to say that reality is entirely probabilistic. It's entirely driven by chance, because that's not quite true either. If every little quantum system was completely random, you'd never have these large-scale structures. Like human beings, like star systems and galaxies, none of this would ever emerge from the quantum scale. It would just be this like weird, foamy nothingness. So the CTMU merges probabilistic and deterministic rules-based modes of reality into self-determinism. It says that the universe actually intelligently structures itself using its own freedom of will, using its own creativity that is built into its structure, using a process called telic recursion, which means that the universe can call on its own intelligence and design in order to then actualize a state in the future. So it looks at this space of expansive probability and it uses that space to program the present in order to bring about the emergence of an intelligently self-configured universe, using the universe's own free will. The CTMU treats the universe as an agent that is able to intelligently communicate with every part of itself. And this is why we see the same structures repeating themselves at all levels. If you look at fractal geometry, you see structures with self-similar patterns across scale, such as snowflakes, mountain ranges, and coastlines. And this is because the same algorithm, the same procedure for constructing reality is iteratively applied to every part and aspect of it. Seemingly chaotic systems obey regular patterns because they have this property of hology, which means that the same structure, the same rules apply to every part of reality, and reality can intelligently configure itself to respond to its intrinsic need for self-organization. The CTMU treats reality as a cosmic simulation, which doesn't mean that we're running on some sort of external computer in an alien metaverse, but it is just as it sounds. The physical universe that we perceive is being simulated within a deeper, ultimate, metaphysical reality. And this aligns with some of the newer scientific ideas that we live in a holographic universe, which means that we are living in a simulation that is being run on black holes. 3D reality is a projection from the 2D boundary of black holes where quantum information can be projected outwards. And information from black holes is encoded on the event horizon. That's a very common theory in physics nowadays to explain parts of quantum mechanics. And so time and space are linked in this theory. In relativity, time and space are linked, and the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. But this isn't quite true. The future only exists as this space of potential that is programming the present. The future exists in the CTMU as a non-terminal domain, which means a set of potentials that hasn't yet expressed itself but is designing and programming the present in order to bring about its emergence. So the universe uses the future, uses this space of potential. Anything could happen, and it uses its own intelligence and will to structure the present using those outcomes and looking at, from its own perspective, what is the most valuable thing for it to do. Is it has this thing called teleology. It has an end and a purpose which consists in the universe's self-perception and self-identification. So it might look and say, oh, well, we need to bring about star systems and galaxies and biological life because all of these things will be useful to having secondary agents within reality who can perceive and participate in the universe's structure. And so past, present, and future don't exist simultaneously as they do in relativity, in this idea of like a block universe where everything has already happened. That's kind of boring. What is true is that they exist meta-simultaneously, is they are all affecting each other at every point through agents within reality with mind and will, is that we are the connection between the future and the present. The future is programming the present through us and through these larger scale metaphysical dynamics as we participate in this grand cosmic drama. This mathematical structure that exists and embodies the space of potential of the universe is called the conspansive manifold. And when the conspansive manifold evolves, this geometrical space, so too does the universe evolve. This is how the universe represents its evolution to itself. And so the conspansive manifold is essentially a simulation. It has a programming domain, this non-terminal domain of potential, and a display domain, this terminal domain of physical reality, and those two are constantly interacting with and programming one another so as to create this seamless display of reality. Nevertheless, the true workings of existence exist in this non-terminal domain. Whereas in relativity, gravity is reimagined as a curvature of space-time, meaning that it's essentially the gravitational pull of massive objects that causes gravity to emerge. The CTMU generalizes this and says, yes, that's true, but the reason why it does that is because the conspansive manifold has willed it so, is that it recognizes when there are massive objects that it needs to create this gravitational force because it has determined that gravity and gravitational attraction between massive objects is useful to the construction of the physical universe. And this aligns with the classical physics anthropic principle that the universe must exist in a way that allows for observers. And the CTMU takes this one step further and says that ultimate reality exists by, for, and through agentive participants who exist within reality and can live and make choices on behalf of the reality system. So we are participating in reality's self-identification. We are not just passive observers of reality, but we are participants not just at the quantum level, but at the level of this universal mind. So reality is a self-simulation in which we are both programmers and players. We exist both within the display, and we can make choices within the programmatic aspect of reality. And again, this represents a profound departure from academic orthodoxy. So even if there are some parts of the CTMU which might make sense to academics, they're never going to credit it because it will make them look bad. If they go and see a citation from the cognitive theoretic model of the universe, someone will click on that link and that would ruin their reputation, because academia is so wrapped up within its own idea of itself that it doesn't have the space for these novel theories that actually show that the universe is participatory, that humans have a profound and intrinsic role in its construction and organization, and that there is an intelligence in the universe. All these things which make sense to us on an intuitive level, that the universe is just a display of a deeper ultimate reality. All of that makes intuitive sense in our minds. It's how we've thought about reality for a long time. But academia is so wrapped up in scientific materialism that if it can't be tested, if it can't be measured, it doesn't exist. And that's not a deep enough basis on which to build your idea of reality. The CTMU shows that human beings are agents within the cosmic self-simulation and that we have a profound role in reality. As Christopher Langan said, perhaps the most profound change in our worldview will come from learning that living, breathing human beings are essential and logically necessary ingredients of reality, not just emergent phenomena which supervene on brute physical processes. In the CTMU, human beings comprise a class of entities with a very specific mathematical formulation and an essential role in the structure and dynamics of reality. Once this role is properly understood, the spiritual and scientific realms fall back together of their own gravity. The CTMU is a theory of absolute truth, which doesn't mean that it's a compendium of every true statement that's ever been made, but it is a system of absolute logic from which we can make these great advances in science and philosophy. It is fertile and well-aerated soil for the intellectual future of mankind. The CTMU is the most profound and advanced description of reality to flow from a human being, and we will redeem its legacy. I've started an online educational platform called Compatriot Academy that has all of the materials that you need to take you from 0 to 100 in your understanding of this theory of reality, because the CTMU is the future. And if you want to be ahead of the curve and participate in this movement that will completely change our world, then you can sign up today and join our 10 plus courses that will teach you everything that you need to know. Thank you. Let the light shine forth in the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.